Good evening, drowning readers. I can't really say that it's good for me. It kind of feels good and it kind of feels bad. I want to be completely upfront with you in this post by telling you that I really don't feel like doing it in the first place. I had promised in the days of my advocacy and the birth of my advocacy that I would adhere to strict honesty and accountability and that I would not yield from it. I made that promise to Nora. I don't want to do this, but I'm doing it for you. And I'm doing it for my advocacy, and I'm doing it because I continue to want to hold myself accountable to this lifelong illness that I have. I'm very somber right now, very reflective. I've had some triggers over the last couple weeks, and I've been on an emotional whirlwind. I had to go. I didn't have to. I wanted to go on a vacation to see my family for some me time, for some downtime after me and my former sweetheart had officially signed our papers of the dissolution of our marriage, and I'd made a handful of posts there. The night before I left, I had a trigger. My sister is a photographer, a very self-taught, very gifted photographer in the islands where I visited, and she does very good work. There's a famous beach that I went to, the same one I jumped off the cliff for my blog, taking the plunge, and she's very good at what she does, and she's really good about capturing moments and memories, and that was a very popular beach to do photo shoots. That night she said that there were 3 or 4 of them on average, but there were on that night near sunset there were, I think I counted no less than 8 or 9 photographers who were hired on to shoot anywhere from families to engagement photos to wedding photos and all sorts of things. It didn't bother me, and someone had said in the intensive today with my program that the self-deprecating humor is a coping mechanism, and indeed I have used humor and self-deprecating humor as a coping mechanism to deal with my pain. When I had jumped off that cliff on the narrative, taking the plunge, I jokingly shouted out to the onlookers who were frozen and waiting for me to jump, "This is for all you single mamas. This is for all you single mothers. Like, yeah, I'm a badass. I can do this. Bring it on. I've conquered my proverbial fears." And I'll never be arrogant enough to say that I've conquered my fears in their entirety. The triggers. They started when I saw a bride in a wedding dress with a long flowing veil and a wedding party, finding the perfect location on the beach. My sister was filming a husband and a wife and 2 little boys dressed up in cute little outfits. I saw a generational family with 3 generations. I saw an older couple giving a tender embrace, and the aging gentleman tenderly rubbing sunscreen on her back, noticing the crook of someone's back where it is being caressed by an arm, the gesture of guiding and moving someone that you love forward, literally and figuratively. The small things that I would so very like to maintain the illusion that I could just laugh it off. But when I was watching my 2 nieces and my nephew, and I was laughing it off, but they were everywhere, and I was surrounded. I found myself being surrounded by memories of bitterness and regret. a haunting repulsivity towards love and families that were not broken. Young love, the ideation of carefree love, and the fear deep down inside me of knowing, wondering if I'll ever feel of that again, being a single mother now with 6 kids. It's a lot, and I would never refer to my children as baggage. I would never ever do that, but I'm 38 years old. I have a lot of life left to live and a lot of love to give. I started choking up and getting short-tempered with my nieces and my nephew, and when they were finally done, I told my sister, I need to get out of here. It's just too much. Like, I tried to laugh it off, but when that engagement couple got right up in the surf, like 20 feet away from me, I'm like, no, I can't see them kissing in the surf. I don't want that thrown on me. I don't want that trigger thrown on me. And of course, everyone had no idea. I had a trigger today because of our writing intensive, because of our downfalls, and because of the reflection that we did. And because my life experience with my theme of accountability has yet to be fulfilled, it still has a hole that aches and questions that are unanswered. And that's why I'm so passionate about this particular topic of accountability, is because I have never been able to fully heal. And I was triggered today because I went over to see my father-in-law. He was the kindest, most patient, most gentle, most tolerant, and dedicated man. And I miss him. I've mentioned several times in my posts that I don't enjoy exclusivity. I don't enjoy sheltering myself away from my family, and the tragedy is most of the people in my family are good and did these things out of ignorance or lack of judgment or lack of insight, and that's why it's so important to me to clarify these things, because it would be so much easier if people were just bad and outwardly selfish and malicious, because it would be so easy to identify. But the fact that it's not, that they are good, religious people. There was only one person in my story who caused me so much trauma that I came to no other logical conclusion that it was deliberate psychological abuse in the form of narcissism and covert and altruistic narcissism. And because I'm not whole, and because I've come so far in my recovery, I do stay away from this one individual for self-preservation. I don't want my ex-husband's family thinking that I'm choosing to be a recluse under pretenses of bitterness and anger and pettiness, which is not the case. And I want to be stronger. I want to overcome my deeply embedded trauma that was a repercussion of their choices, because I feel deep down, I feel petty and immature and selfish for not being able to overcome my trauma. The only thing that I can do logically in my mind at this point is to stay away, just to maintain safety. And because of this one individual, because of this one singular individual, never knowing when they're going to be around, I avoid a lot of other people in the process, and that's a very high price for me to pay. Because after 4 years, I still exclude myself from family meals and holidays and events where it would be normal to be able to participate and not think twice about it. And I've tried to tell people over and over again that I don't do it to be petty and immature, but I do it as an instinctual need of self-preservation. And I was triggered tonight with my father-in-law because he is so good and so kind. And I told him very briefly that I was doing a podcast next week, and I was really excited about it. And I said I missed him. It was a trigger. It was a trigger for me, and I said that I missed him. And I do feel that hole. And accountability. This is going to I'm in no way doing this to be theatrical. This is about nearly as real as one could get who is adhering to the very strict code of daily accountability that I vowed to adhere to, not only to myself, not only to Nora, but because I am so passionate about my message that I don't have any room for hypocrisy. And I don't have any room for damaging internal narrative that does not cease. I tripped and stumbled on my vacation. When I took this, this is ibuprofen, plain and simple. It's nothing fancy. It has diphenhydramine in it, 25 milligrams. When I jumped off that cliff twice and severely bruised my coccyx, I was in a lot of pain. I couldn't get in and out of cars and the truck, and it hurt. So I took the ibuprofen. And the diphenhydramine is an antihistamine and a sleep aid. I am an addict. And while I have staunchly claimed that I have been sober for nearly 4 years from polypharmacy abuse, that is the truth. I never did go back to Adderall or Ambien or Xanax or oxycodone, and I think I made a few feeble attempts in the beginning stages while I was working through my accountability. I think I did. And that is another deficit that addicts have, is the memory and the recall of their actions. And I took 10 of these, knowing full well as I stare into the camera that it is abusing a medicine, whether it is prescribed to you or not. I was fully aware that I was taking it in excess. I was fully aware that it was a coping mechanism. And I was fully aware because I told myself that last week. And this is what I mean. And it hurts. It hurts right now getting up off the toilet seat. This is what I mean when I said bye-bye. No more. I don't know how many of you took the time to listen to that audio clip that I posted as a reference to James Frey's famous memoir, A Million Little Pieces. To just hold on. In they go and out, I said, in they go and out amongst the grass, out amongst the trees, out amongst the trash and in the toilet. The next day I'll do better. The next day I'll do better. I'll rid them from my house. I wanted to test myself, Nora. I wanted to be like James. I wanted to be James and his rose. I thought I could have it. I thought I could use it as a token of resolve. And I taped a note on my Benadryl. I taped a little pink note on my Benadryl bottle that said, just hold on. Just hold on. Leonard told James that he could do anything if he just held on. And it's antihistamine. It's ibuprofen and antihistamine used in an abusive manner, which in theory I know, and I have a profound understanding that that coping mechanism is erroneous. That's why I feel bad. That's why I'm frustrated with myself right now, and that's why I'm holding myself accountable to you. I feel better knowing that they're gone, and I knew that I would feel better after they were gone, because I know my limitations. Addicts are very intuitive, and I want to tell you how people die. I want to tell you how people die from overdoses, even if it is just ibuprofen with sleep aid in it. As time progresses, addicts begin to develop a tolerance, and there are so many TEDx talks on addiction and the science behind it. We know that the brain builds up tolerance and dependability, and that it levels out so that you need more of a certain item. The sad thing that we hear as far as glorifying the media with celebrities is that they have their set tolerance that they're fully aware of. They know that they're okay with X amount of heroin or X amount of oxycodone or fentanyl, or any of these celebrities have the unfortunate ability and the tragic ability to get what they want when they want it because of assistance and their status in society. And this is how they die. This is how we lose famous names forever. They genuinely think that they have that tolerance met. They take the dose that they think their body can handle because they want that escape. They have no intention. So many people have no intention of losing their lives to overdoses. They are accidental, and that is why they are god-awful and tragic. I mentioned another list of names in my narrative for my first communications class in college in the hottest summer on record since the 1920s 20s, I believe. Whitney, Philip, Heath, Corey, Chris, and there are so many others, and Robin. I want to give you a minute to think about those names and see if you can find a joint commonality between them. Whitney, Heath, Amy, Corey, Robin. A woman had said the night before she died, as she was conversing with a friend, that all she had wanted in the world was to love and to be loved like Jesus did. I want to be able to love unconditionally and freely. Her name was Whitney. And the next day she was found dead in her bathtub. Whitney Houston. We all know her songs, and we all know the power of her voice. But did we all know of her pain? Do we all try to learn from that pain or remember that pain? Corey Monteith died in Canada from an accidental overdose. The last words he told his girlfriend, Leigh Michelle, at the time was, I love you too. The Oscars paid a posthumous award to none other than Heath Ledger for his performance in The Dark Knight. His family took his Oscars in his honor. And we honor these celebrities for their contributions to society, to what they've brought to film and media and writing. But who knows Heath's last words? We all know he was epic in Batman as the Joker, but how many people know his last words? He reassured his partner, Michelle Williams, at the time that he would be okay. And he'd overdosed on sleep aids and I believe some benzos. And Chris whimpered on the side of the bed to a hooker, please don't leave me. I just don't want to be alone. I think that was Chris Farley, or it might have been John Belushi, I'm not sure. But the point was, the hooker didn't believe him. She took his wallet, she stole his wallet and left him to die on the side of his bed after his last words had been, please don't leave me alone. If we want to honor these people who struggle in such high exposure with these devastating illnesses, Robin, last name Williams, he had hung himself, and the world, I know, was profoundly, profoundly shocked due to his impeccable ability to bring joy and laughter into the world. His wife paid homage to him and did something very brave and very honorable to respect his memory far more than his contributions to cinema. She explained the devastating disease of his Lewy body dementia and how it was eating him and his mind and his mental health and clarity from the inside out, and how torturous it was for him, and how conflicted he was, and how horrible he felt about his illness. She gave Robin the ultimate gift, and the power, and I say power, the power to look past the persona, the images that society holds to such high value and esteem in ways of worldly achievements. I will never think of Robin Williams the same way, but to have a profound respect for his suffering. I want to show you what overdosing on amphetamine looks like. I believe in shock value if there is no covert reinforcement of shame involved in that sobering call to action. That is another illusion of hypocrisy that I will address. This is what happens. I want you to look closely at my face. I want you to see the circumference of those pockmarks. Amphetamine scars, as it turns out, do not tan. And that has made them all the more apparent. These were once painful, hard boils and welts and filled with pus and drainage, so painful to the touch that I could not open my mouth to smile or chew. And I was horrified and I was scared. In 2011, these were very similar to what my legs looked like. Now, I remember my own father at the time telling me that they looked unsightly and that I needed to cover them up. I had no idea what these were when I was 27 years old, at the peak of my addiction to amphetamine in the form of Adderall. I had no idea that these marks that I bore carried the stigma of methamphetamine abuse. I am not ashamed of these scars. They facilitate my narrative. They facilitate my advocacy. And more importantly, when I saw the man who looked like me, who was so openly shamed and disparaged and mocked for these scars hidden discreetly under my pant leg. It might be easier for you to see now why I am so passionate. Not because I am no longer an addict, but because I still very much am one. But tomorrow is another day. And tomorrow I can do better. Just like the thousands upon millions of addicts, just like me, who say the same thing in their own internal narrative that does not cease. And because I am strong, because I have a message, I know that I will not let this shame linger that I just shared with you, a trigger, a relapse, even if it is just 10 little blue pills of antihistamine. It doesn't matter. My internal narrative is there. This was me vowing to adhere to strict accountability. I want you to look. This is who I am. I carry my scars, and where they once were a source of shame, I wear them as a badge of honor. I wear them with pride. I'm strong enough to not hold on to the shame. I did feel it for a while tonight, but that's why I came to talk to you here. to hold myself personally accountable, because I don't have anyone in my life right now that I can. This is why I'm reaching out to none other than Nora Valco to help me, to use me as research, to take images of my brain, to explore the damage and the degradation in areas of my memory and my cognitive impulsivity, my lack of judgment, so that I can share her divine and passionate call to action, in turn, a grand and a large-scale social movement, because she had stressed that knowing the science of an addiction is not merely enough to change society's stance on what it means to be someone like me. We need a large social movement. And that is what I want to share with you in conclusion to my confession. I want you to help me start a movement. I want you to help me start a social movement. I'm going to call it, Are You Drowning? Hashtag, Are You Drowning? My blog is drowninginmadagascar.org. I have not nearly enough media exposure as I would like. I'm trying to teach myself along the way, having accomplished everything that I have thus far, despite my illness, despite my impulsivity, despite my recklessness, despite my lack of judgment and in the intensity of the moment. I have been refined through my life experience, and what I have learned is that society, family, and friends continue to disparage and define me by my human experience. I'm not ashamed for showing you what I did show you just now. I had trepidation, but I feel better, holding myself accountable to each and every one of you in turn, who may or may not share these internal thought processes that haunt you, the ones that never stop. If you drew any strength from my narrative in turn, just as I had been so passionate to hold on, just like James. It doesn't matter whether it's James and his cheap rose of wine. It doesn't matter if it's Jenny McCombs and her little pink bottle of antihistamine from Walmart. It doesn't matter. If you have to sit on your hands like James, if you have to toss your pink pills into the night or down the toilet, do what you have to do to be free, because I'm feeling shame and regret now, but I know that they are gone and that tomorrow's a new day. And this is reality. I am still, and I will always identify myself as someone who is an addict. Help me start this social movement. Help me start the Are You Drowning movement. The quick theology behind Are You Drowning is that in light of COVID-19, the statistical trajectory is going to be dire in our mental health crisis. I've mentioned this. Having worked in healthcare, it is dire and frightening. Thousands upon thousands of people have died in their own physiology as fluid fills their alveoli and their tender lungs and literally drowns them from the inside out. And I've said this before, so many others will drown as a repercussion of this epidemic, and they won't drown in their own physiology. They will drown in the degradation of their brain and their physiology up here, in addiction and substance abuse disorder and loneliness and shame and despair and isolation and disparagement, and they will drown. And we will lose lives, and that's why I want you gifted and talented group of like-minded individuals who have inspired me so much already. So much that I can share with you, probably in about as intimate setting as you can get, because I'm sitting on a toilet, literally. Closed one, flushing. But I want to call it, are you drowning? Are you drowning? You know, Black Lives Matter, Me Too, so many social movements to promote awareness. I want Nora Valco and I to start this movement together, the Are You Drowning movement, to advocate for the ones who suffer in silence, and the ones who are the most prone and the most vulnerable in a statistical trajectory that is undiscriminatory and as unbiased as the virus itself, the likes of which I have seen, experienced, and lived firsthand. And I thank you for letting me feel like your family in the briefest of times that I have been with you, as a sober addict who is not sober. Please help me.